Cate Blanchett, thank you so much for joining us on The World.
Thank you, Beverly.
You've just returned from Bangladesh, where you saw firsthand how many of the Rohingya Muslim refugees are living. Give us a sense of what you encountered visiting Cox's Bazar.
Yes, I was last week in Bangladesh with UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. And before going, I knew, like a lot of your viewers, that the scale of the displacement crisis from the Rohingya refugees since August, over 670,000 people, which is twice the population of Canberra in a few short months. But I don't think anything could have prepared me for just the precarious nature of the physical environment that these people are living in, on hillsides denuded of trees to make space for dwellings that are really, as the monsoon rains approaches, they're just landslides waiting to happen. There were so many children unaccompanied by a guardian, let alone a parent, and so many female heads of households. I mean, the level of vulnerability, it just is unspeakably huge.
We hear terrible stories of women being raped, young girls being sold as sex slaves. What are some of the stories that you heard?
Well, I sat with several 18-year-old girls in a women's centre, and you know, when you look into the eyes of an 18-year-old girl who very matter-of-factly tells you that as she was fleeing, her house was on fire, and her whole village was alight, and her 3-year-old brother was thrown into that fire, and her elder brother was dismembered and shot in front of her, and she had to keep running, obviously because friends of hers they call it torture, but when they say torture they mean rape, and they ran and fled towards the border of Bangladesh. That is a story that I kept hearing over and over and over again. There wasn't a single person I met who didn't know where one of their family members were. And once you've heard those stories, it's very, very difficult to turn away from them.
Your reality, though, and the warning that you are giving it, there is this impending disaster awaiting them as the monsoon season approaches. What do you understand is going to happen? How will that impact the way they are living?
Bangladesh is one of the poorest and wettest countries on the earth. And the monsoon season is coming, which means months and months and months of rain. And as I stood on the high point of Cate settlement, you could, as far as to the horizon on either side, there were just dirt hills where all of these dwellings, which have been very quickly and temporarily erected with the help of UNHCR, are ready. As soon as one rain happens, it's a house. It's like a house of cards. It's all going to domino.
You talk about the border. We understand the military are now building fences. They've taken over their burnt-out villages and are building their own structures, really signalling that they don't want these people to come back. What is your sense of the future for these people?
All of the women and girls in particular that I spoke to who have been raped, who have been tortured, who have seen people dismembered and shot in front of them, you know, their grandmothers burnt, if I was them, I wouldn't want to return. And so what needs to happen is that they're stateless refugees, which makes them particularly vulnerable, and that the citizenship laws that were so restrictive back in 1982, they really do need to be changed. And they were all saying, until we become citizens and begin, you know, basic human rights in Myanmar, it is not safe for them to return.
Well, the UN has described what has happened as genocide and ethnic cleansing, and of course Aung San Suu Kyi, the leader of Myanmar, is still being received. She was received in Australia this week. Do you think she's been held accountable enough for her role in what has happened?
It is bewildering, isn't it, that someone who has been such a fighter for even a fragile democracy, and who has been so hailed as someone who upholds human rights, does not seem to be speaking out more clearly about the atrocities that are so very clearly happening under her watch. But I think that I'm sort of, having just come back from Bangladesh, the most pressing thing for me is the need to support the refugees in the very immediate present.
The priority indeed. But do you think another layer, for example, Australia still gives aid to Myanmar? What kind of international pressure should be brought on at a higher level? Do you think Australia should stop giving aid to Myanmar?
Well, there are other countries, you know, Canada and France, the EU, the UK, the US, who have stopped such aid. And what I suppose, from my point of view, it wouldn't be seen to be prudent to support the Myanmar military when such atrocities are being committed by them. But, you know, as I said, this is a humanitarian crisis, and the political solutions are absolutely vital in the longer term and in the immediate term. But I am talking about in the next few weeks and months, because when the rains hit Bangladesh, one of the wettest countries on earth, it is months and months and months of rain. And the situation that I saw these young children in are, it's a domino effect. If one rain and those houses are going to collapse. So organisations like UNHCR really do need the financial support, and of course the Australian people have been already so generous in their support, as has the Australian government.
Cate, it would be remiss of me not to ask you, while I have you, two big political issues in your own industry, and when you encounter a persecuted minority like the Rohingyas, do you feel a responsibility to those minorities that work in your own industry? And of course the issue of an inclusion rider that was raised by Frances McDormand at the Oscars, would you support such a concept?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's artists, people, creative people deal in grey areas and in nuance and express doubt. And I've wholeheartedly stand with the men and women in my industry who are working extremely hard to stamp out systemic layers of abuse that have long existed in our industry. And our industry is perhaps very shiny and public, and you know, we're airing our laundry in public, but it's inequality of pay, abuses of power, systemic abuses of power. I don't think there's an industry around that don't exist in. So you know, I think it's incredibly important, and there's an enormous creative opportunity in allowing those people whose voices have been marginalised to be front and centre now, because it changes the discourse. And I deal in the creative industries, so you don't want a homogenous, purely white male perspective on any creative enterprise. You want diversity. Diversity of voices leads to a much more creative industry.
And to that point of airing the dirty linen, do you feel this Me Too campaign that was highly symbolic during the awards season will have momentum? Do you think it is going to continue? I feel very positive that the volcanic nature of the Me Too campaign, when people have been accepted and marginalised for decades and decades and decades, their voice is unheard, then of course it's going to be you know, of course it's going to be volcanic. It has to be, but I feel that women are standing united. And certainly, you know, having just come back from Bangladesh, it is the women and the children who are always at the most vulnerable. Cate Blanchett, we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.